In the past, Eden Zero fans have had to defend themselves and the story they love, but now that's not really the case. With me, I have Jet the Prophet to talk about this shift in Eden Zero. Jet, why don't you say hi real quick?
What is good, everyone? It is your boy, Jet the Prophet, baby. Today, I'm joined by another top 1% YouTuber.
Too kind. So let me just ask you to get this started. What was your sense of Eden Zero and the community, the fan base too, when you got into it?
So when I got into it, it was definitely a community where it was kind of sheltered, you know. It was, you have the wider area of anime fans, and they're looking at Eden Zero and just with tons of hate. And when I got in here, they're extremely nice, caring, very open. I talked to a lot of people. They were like, oh yeah, check out this and this. A lot of these people told me, I was like, oh, do you guys get offended when people say it looks like fairy tale? I'm like, no, this is done before. They told me about Rave Master. So a lot of these people are very kind, very nice, and I enjoy the community a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy because outside looking in, I had the worst perception of the fan base because I don't know if you remember, and a lot of people might not remember this, but there was a channel that did sort of a very sarcastic joke review of the first episode, and they were very much of that perspective of this is literally just fairy tale. And I don't know, it obviously wasn't the entire Eden Zero fan base, but somebody started just massively disliking the video, and there ended up being problems with that channel, and it totally ruined their channel. So that was my first experience with the fan base in Eden Zero, and I was like, okay. And as a content creator, I was like, well, I'm not going to touch this at all. I don't want anything to do with the fan base this toxic. But then I just kept going to my local bookstores, and I kept seeing the volumes, and they just look so good. Say what you will about Mashima, but his art style is eye candy. It's addicting just to look at. So eventually I bit the bullet. I was like, you know what? I like fairy tale. I'm sure I'll like this one too. It's science fantasy. I checked it out. It was awesome. And like you said, the fan base couldn't be nicer.
Oh yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I think I know what video you were talking about, where he was kind of giving off a very crude impression of the first episode. And I kind of watched them. I kind of get it. You know, with my stuff, I like being sarcastic. So I saw it, I'm like, oh, I kind of see where he's coming from. I see the whole point. But then I saw a lot of people just get on him, guys, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. But at least it's one of those things where, it got popular and people saw it, whether it's for good or bad, no matter whether he was talking bad or good about it, it got out there. I go by the motto, bad publicity is good publicity. And even though he gave Easy a bad rep, sorta, at least it got out there to more people. And I know a lot of people probably saw that video, was like, oh, let me check it out. Probably saw his video, watched the first episode, it probably gets worse. And then they probably got into oh, I actually started liking this. It was the same thing that happened when the first promotional art released for the manga. People saw oh, this looks just like fairy tale, it's gonna be terrible, Reddit. And they actually got into it. I think people should probably give stuff more of a chance before they actually give an opinion on it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big problem with the anime and manga community. Just today, there was a video from Super Eye Patch Wolf where I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but I'm hearing a lot of negative feedback on the video of he just pushed the same old narratives about Jump, and a lot of people are like, well, did you even look at the smaller stuff? And that's just a thing with anime, and especially anime Twitter, is you just see the same, for lack of better words, narrative over and over and over again. And that was the deal with Eden Zero. You just kept seeing the same old tired takes over and over again. But fortunately, things have changed. Before, like you and I have said, it was you had a very negative perception of it looking in, just because of YouTubers and just whoever talking about it, and just its overall impression. But then when you started it, you're like, wow, this is awesome. Now it's totally different. Now, obviously you and I push it to people, and Eden Zero fans on Twitter push it to people, and there's so much positivity in the community now where people are almost drawn to it just because of how much people have to say about it. Like, just because of how positive the community is and just because of how much people hype it up. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, and I would say, especially with you and I know a lot of your videos get the rounds. I'll say, not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I'll say we're probably doing the series a favor, you know, getting it out there, hyping it up. And I think that's what the series needs, because right now it's probably at a point where, you know, it has its community, it has its fans, but it's not exactly as popular as, like, you know, its predecessor Fairy Tail. It has the potential to get there, but it's not necessarily there yet. And I feel like once more people, you know, once they're exposed to it more, they'll start to get into it, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's just missing that viral moment because it's definitely gained the respect to at least let it compete in the mainstream view of other manga. So for example, this isn't like a definitive parameter by any means, but you have the manga of the year stream, and I didn't watch that one or follow it, but back then Eden Zero I don't even think made it. I could be wrong, but it didn't win. Like, it wasn't a competitor at all. But I believe people were like, oh man, Eden Zero should have been in this. And it was like, it was a minority at that point. Fast forward to the next one, or at least the last one that Rogers Base did. And I followed it. Like, when he put the polls on Twitter, it was like, at least from my perspective, it was like the most voted for manga to be in the stream. And then in the stream, first of all the content creators were like, ugh, I have to read Eden Zero. And then they read it. They're like, okay, you know what? This was actually really good. And a bunch of them went on, like whatever, a month later, a few weeks later, to read it and binge it and get hooked. And when they were talking about it, they had nothing but respect for it. And that was reflected in the fact that it almost won. Like, it did pretty well. So the respect is there. I just think it's missing that viral moment. So I'll turn to you. What do you think it takes for it to go from where it is now to where, like, it's positive, but, like, you know, it's just sort of sitting there? What do you think is gonna get it to that, like, fairy tale level of being viral?
You see, I think that's a kind of a hard question for me exactly to answer, but I'm gonna try to answer it anyways. First of all, going back to what you were saying about it making the tournament, I was happy. I was happy it got that far. It got to like to where like the semifinals, or like it got pretty far.
Something like that.
I was twerking, bro. I was twerking. It was I was glad it got that far.
This man said twerking.
Yeah, but for a viral moment, it needs. When I think of viral moments, I think of something that gets overhyped, no matter how good or how bad it is. For something to get viral, it has to be overhyped. Look at most notable one, Demon Slayer. An extremely good episode. 17, 19, I don't care. Extremely good episode, but it got overhyped. And when something gets overhyped, that means people are getting tired of people hearing how good it is. Look at something on a smaller scale, the whole Black Bulls episode where they jumped longers, you know, Luck, Magna, and Asta. Everyone loves that, but then it got to the point where it got too much love, and people are like, all right, stop loving it so much. I think Eden Zero needs something, a moment that connects with fans that much, that to where it gets praised too much. Like right now, it's getting praise, but like not at the extent to where it's getting too much praise, besides from the people who already read it. And I think for it to get that moment, it needs to do something that absolutely blows the fans away. Now, when you think of like blow the fans away, what exactly would blow the fans away? Subversion. A lot of Eden Zero fans are used to Fairy Tail and I guess a little bit of Rave Master, where it's fun, but it's kind of does what you predicted to do. And I think it's gonna hit that subversion moment right in season 2. I think, are we allowed to say spoilers or no?
Minor spoilers. Keep it to minor spoilers.
Okay. Well, the big bad Dragon Joe does something that you would not expect within a Mashima series. And I think that moment right there is going to be the moment where Eden Zero starts to pick up a lot more steam, because that's something that we have never seen in another Mashima work. And I'm pretty sure you agree, because when I first read it, I was like, there's no way that they actually did this. And even what happened afterwards, I was like, okay, I kind of expected that to happen. The initial impression of it just blew my mind, because it was something that I did not expect. Look at another subversion moment happened in the Oi War arc, with Ziggy doing something that completely goes against what Mashima is going up against. And I think that's what Eden Zero has been doing this entire time, doing something Mashima has not done before. But those two moments right there are something that catches even the most self-aware Mashima fans off. You're like, oh, he probably won't do that. Those are two moments that I think are gonna get Eden Zero trending, because it not only throws the fans off, but it throws haters off. Because you're a hater watching it. You're like, oh, he's gonna do this, and then he doesn't. You're like, excuse me, Mashima, you're not supposed to do this, and then they're gonna praise it. So I think those are gonna be the moments where Eden Zero finally gets trending, where it subverts people's expectations.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If the Draken Joe moment doesn't do it, then there's plenty more, because like you said, Eden Zero does such a good job of subverting expectations. Again, the Draken Joe thing, I remember physically, literally yelling out loud, like, oh crap, that was dark. And there's only more moments like that. So I think that's a really good point about subverting expectations. So we'll just have to see. But that's going to be it for the conversation. We'll wrap it up here. I just wanted to talk about how crazy it is that Eden Zero used to get memed on all the time, but now we're talking about how great it is, and how we're kind of just waiting for it to blow up. But Jet, do you want to say anything before we close things out?
Make sure you guys read Eden Zero, and then read it again, watch the anime, play the mobile game. If your phone has space for it, believe me, that phone takes up a lot of space. And if you already haven't, check out the Hiro Mashima Rebecca game. Shout out to my man Hiro Mashima. He always be doing it. He in the streets grinding 24/7.
He really is, though.
That man has a work ethic that I wish I had 10% of. And last thing I want to say, if you guys are watching this video, make sure you make the best decision you can make all day by subscribing to my boy, the top 1%er himself.
And I will follow that up. And guys, make sure you visit Jet's channel and subscribe to his channel. He has a ton of great videos. In fact, as of recording, he just did a video on the worst characters in Eden Zero. So make sure you check that out. But that is going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for listening. And the both of us hope to hear from you soon.
Baby.